Hello and welcome back to another Daily Defiant. I'm Jack and today we're bringing you the one piece of information we've all been waiting for. That is, of course, whether or not Sam Bankman-Fried is any closer to doing time in jail. And a big thank you to AlgoFi for sponsoring today's video, more on them later. In an interesting turn of events this week, the disgraced FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried is said to be facing a market manipulation inquiry. The investigation by US prosecutors will try to answer the question of whether or not Sam manipulated the market for two cryptocurrencies back in May. According to Reuters, they suspect that Sam controlled the prices of two interlinked currencies, that's Terra USD and Luna, to benefit the entities he controlled, including FTX and Alameda Research. Also, the new FTX CEO John J. Ray III is scheduled to testify at next week's House hearing, and Sam also tweeted that he will appear before the committee eventually. So who's on Sam's side? Well, testimony aside, if Sam really faces legal prosecution, who will defend him? Sam's legal team has experienced quite the shuffle lately, and previously, Bankman-Fried was represented by the prestigious Paul Weiss law firm, but his attorneys there fired him over his incessant and disruptive tweeting in the aftermath of the FTX collapse, which they said made it more difficult to defend him. Perhaps a more juicy detail in that story is that when his previous legal team asked him to never again admit his wrongdoing or publicly accept that he messed up, Sam apparently told them to go f themselves. Now, he's hired a lawyer with a rather controversial client history. According to The Byte, that's a calculated choice. Going forward, Sam will be defended by Cohen, a former federal prosecutor, whose firm previously defended Mexican drug lord El Chapo, and more recently Ghislaine Maxwell from the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. Interestingly, both El Chapo and Maxwell were found guilty, while Cohen was their lawyer. So why would that legal team be his choice? Before we get into the details of what's changed, a quick word from today's sponsor, AlgoFi. AlgoFi is the de facto DeFi hub on Algorand. It offers a fast, affordable, and transparent alternative to black box exchanges and lenders amid the CeFi wreckage. AlgoFi's AMM stable swap, lending market, and community governance make it the one-stop shop for high-performance DeFi. Its move to launch fully programmatic on-chain DAO governance will make AlgoFi the first protocol on Algorand to reach true decentralization. Trade and contribute to the future of open finance today at algofi.org. Now back to the story, and let's quickly look at how big the potential sentence could be. The US Department of Justice has requested an independent probe of the case, and former federal prosecutor Renato Mariotti told CNBC that it sure looks like there's a chargeable fraud case here. And Bankman-Fried's potential punishment is no slap on the wrist. He could be facing life in prison, according to former Commodity Futures Trading Commission trial lawyer Braden Perry. Now, this estimate he shares is according to the US sentencing guidelines, which take into consideration the number of victims and the size of the apparent fraud at FTX and Alameda Research. So, what has changed? Well, this week's developments are extremely important because Sam has claimed on multiple occasions in the past that the $8 billion of missing funds were not stolen or commingled, but rather misaccounted. We know from FTX's user agreement that any use of user funds beyond what was agreed upon is most likely going to be treated in court as a crime. That is, the individuals who deposited money on the exchange weren't giving FTX any permission to go and gamble that money in risky leveraged positions. But what's really the big development here is that over the course of the past week, he may have finally spilled the beans and shot himself in the foot. By Sam's own admission, FTX agreed not to take ownership of those funds, then took ownership of those funds in order to service margin customer withdrawals. That's really important. In one of the interviews this week, SBF said that during the crash, withdrawals were not limited. The money was fungible and it was paid out from an omnibus wallet. And although he defended himself by saying that they just wanted to treat all the customers equally, that in itself would be against the rules. The interviewer later tweeted, arguing that this is fraud because, quote, "You can't do that. You can't share funds between all your accounts of your riskiest degenerates and the grandma who put her Bitcoin into storage on FTX." So, in essence, by permitting the fungibility of assets during the withdrawal process, the users who didn't sign up for the risky terms of service, such as the margin accounts and the futures accounts, were treated the same as other users who did. And that is what most people agree to be commingling of user funds and a direct breach of the terms of service. It's worth bearing in mind that we're talking about FTX user funds here, not Alameda, so Sam won't have the luxury of using his previous excuses to claim that he wasn't running Alameda personally and that he didn't know. One thing is for certain though, by running his mouth on various podcasts, Twitter spaces, and indeed mainstream appearances like the New York Times and the Good Morning America interviews, Sam's created a wealth of material and evidence which could be used in courts, meaning the process could drag on for a while. So the moment we've all been waiting for, the delivery of justice, the return of the user funds, may have to wait just a bit longer, at least until the potentially lengthy legal proceedings are over. And until then, we'll continue to cut through all the noise and bring you the most relevant details. So please subscribe to the channel now to not miss any of those updates. I'm Jack, thank you once again for joining the Daily Defiant, and see you again tomorrow in the weekly recap.